bit out of frequency this morning. Indeed, Warmers to Please have stated that they're not going to tolerate my behavior in public places anymore. It's all very interesting. All I'm doing is sitting in the street. I'm not communicating with anyone. I'm merely sitting in the street, but Warmers to Police are issuing an alert for basically people to beware of me. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Warmers to Police are an operational paedophile ring operating for the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst networks, interconnected with Warmers to military base. Indeed, Warmers to Police are paedophiles, all of them. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, as I stated, the Wiltshire Police entire network is a big organ harvesting paedophile child trafficking syndicate operational for the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, these people all claim to be British patriots, but work for a Nazi intelligence continuum organization. So it's all very interesting to note. Indeed, technically, the Nazis won the Second World War. This is obvious in the establishment of satanic networks all over the United Kingdom since the cessation of hostilities. Indeed, there were networks of Fifth Column, British fascists who engineered the real conflict, i.e. the Nazi takeover of the United Kingdom, utilizing Masonic lodges that were Illuminized to basically conquer the Anglo population. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Britain is becoming a fascist police state very quickly. And it's all rather concerning, especially for me as a mentally ill man. What with the fascists in power in Britain being eugenicists and wishing to exterminate mental patients as part of a ritual sacrifice to the Masonic demon gods, which is basically a similar occurrence to what is occurring in Devizes and C.J. Robbins' butcher shop in Warminster. Indeed, 4,000 Russian mental patients are transported via GRU networks of black marketeers to Wiltshire from Vladivostok every 4 years. And these Russian mental patients are sacrificed by butchers in underground cellars beneath the butcher's shops, sacrificed to the Germanic, Babylonian, and Aramaic demon gods worshipped by the Freemasons. So it's all very interesting to consider the fact that 4,000 Russian mental patients are killed every 4 years by Wiltshire people. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, it's only a matter of time before the Wiltshire butchers start hacking up British mental patients en masse as well. What with the changing tide of the UK political scene taking a shift to the hard right. But what's interesting about this is that the hard left, i.e. British hippie networks, are on board with the eugenicist agenda. The majority of hippies in Britain are occultists and eugenicists and Crowleyites. So it's all very interesting to consider the fact that the British hippie movement is not a peace and love oriented movement. It is a fascist movement with connections to altruism and rationalism communities in places such as San Francisco and Silicon Valley that are basically driving a lot of this agenda through the hard left for a techno-fascist police state. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the Illuminist networks via intelligence services have control of both sides of the political spectrum and are utilizing this control to basically begin a mass extermination of mental patients and Hebrew commoners for the eventual dominion of the Masonic religion and the implementation of an exoteric Masonic religion for the commoners. Indeed, the temples will be of the Masons will be introduced all throughout the country and replace the churches. Indeed, to advance higher in the hierarchy of the country, you will need to advance in Masonic degrees and be of a certain intelligence quotient. It's all very interesting considering the altruistic rationalism movements have a lot of focus on high IQ and neuro enhancements. So it's all very interesting to note this. It's all a eugenics project being operated by technocrats connected to Bavarian Illuminism. Indeed, it's all very interesting how all of this is coming down to the visions of the 1776 Bavarian Illuminati. They were actually mapped out in a meeting in a cellar in Bremen in 1756 by 250 German and Sabbatean psychiatrists who, interestingly, were themselves interconnected with British intelligence continuums who were basically operative for a similar agenda. So it's all very interesting to consider the synthesis between the Anglo and German cryptocracies with Masonic networks and Templar networks and Satanist networks within these communities, all worshipping certain Germanic pagan gods, basically, who demand human sacrifice and the blood of the innocents in rituals. And indeed, these sorcerers, masons, etc., believe in this occult gobbledygook and therefore are prepared to ritually sacrifice innocents, i.e., mental patients, children, and Hebrew commoners to appease their deities. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the hippies, interconnected with Palestine Action, are ritual sacrifice networks and operative for the Church of Thelema, i.e. the Crowleyan networks, which interconnects the hippie movements in the United Kingdom with the Ordo Templi Orientis. Indeed, as I'm sure you're beginning to realize, I don't like the hippie networks in the United Kingdom. Indeed, certain hippie currents, such as the original Students for a Democratic Society and various interconnected networks in the United States, are of interest to me. However, the occultists and ritual sacrifices connected to various strains of philosophy of Aleister Crowley are of no interest to me at all. Indeed, I despise these people. So it's all very interesting to consider that the main currents of occultism within the British Masonic system is now the Ordo Templi Orientis system, i.e. Thelema, which is all very interesting. The main strand of occultism practiced in British Masonic lodges is Thelemic, therefore Crowleyan. So it's all very interesting indeed. It's interesting that this takeover of the British Masonic system of degrees by the Ordo Templi Orientis is interestingly interconnected with Thelema due to Crowley's interconnectivity with the British and German intelligence services. Indeed, the Ordo Templi Orientis are a branch continuum of Bavarian Illuminism. So it's all very interesting to note. Indeed, the Bavarian Illuminati was itself interconnected heavily with the Prussian Grand Lodge of Freemasonry, and both networks heavily influenced one another, as did the Rite of Strict Observance, the Order of Memphis Mizraim, the Elect Cohens of Martinez de Pasquale, and the Martinists of Comte de Saint Martin, and various other networks that existed at the time, including the key network that controls percentages of British intelligence, i.e. the Asiatic Brethren, who are deeply immersed within the current structure of the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst. Indeed, all of the aforementioned networks are interconnected with the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst of today. Indeed, the elect Cohens are priesthoods of Sabbateans, interestingly, although there are Gentiles within their networks. The elect Cohens are a Zionist elite network that richly sacrifice Hebrew commoners in communion with various Nazi-leaning networks and British eugenicist networks also. Indeed, it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, eugenics, as we know it, is very much a British movement. Although it interconnected with German movements, the Nazi Continuum had a slightly different brand of eugenics. However, it is all interconnecting. All of these networks synthesize with each other, and all of these networks are psychopolitical. It's interesting to note that Lavrenti Beria, who some claim penned the psychopolitical handbook, was a long-range penetration Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst operative within the Russian intelligence services. Indeed, there is some curiosity as to whether Lavrenti Beria penned this psychopolitical handbook, or it was actually L. Ron Hubbard, operating for a eugenicist branch of British intelligence. Indeed, it doesn't truly matter, because the ideas of L. Ron Hubbard, i.e. the false anti-psychiatry operative who was basically preparing the way for the religion of human sacrifice is to be instituted with the coming Masonic system in the United Kingdom. L. Ron Hubbard had a false dialectic with psychiatry when psychology, Scientology and psychiatry are part of the same agenda, i.e. the Illuminist agenda. So it's interesting to consider. Indeed, it's also interesting to consider Lavrenti Beria was working for this agenda also. Lavrenti Beria was a Sabbatean from Georgia, I believe. So it's all very interesting. I can't remember which of the former Soviet countries he was born in, actually, but Lavrenti Beria was a Sabbatean, an operative of the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst. It's interesting to consider that the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst existed before the 1940s and was known as the Abwehr. Indeed, the Abwehr itself comes from the traditions within Prussian and Bavarian intelligence. So this Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst network actually reaches back a good 400 years and incorporates so many networks within its structure that it is a Leviathan intelligence monstrosity. Indeed, today, it controls the majority of corporations in the West and in Russia. So it's all very interesting to know. I've explained about the dialectics that the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst are trying to create between the United Kingdom and the Russian Federation several times, so I'm not going to reiterate on that now. However, it's interesting to note that the Dietrich and Kammler factions of the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst control almost the entire Russian intelligence services, including the FSB, SVR, and GRU. So it's all very interesting to consider that these Nazi Satanist networks, via streams of Illuminism within Masonic lodges and other secret societies utilized by the Russian elite, control the entire Russian intelligence structure. So it's interesting to consider, indeed, what degree of control do the Bavarian Illuminist Continuum, Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst networks have with the British intelligence structure. Indeed, I believe it's about 94% of British intelligence is totally controlled by the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst. So it's all very interesting. It's interesting to note that all of the hippie factions of the intelligence community are all aligned with Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst interests through the Church of Thelema and the Church of Scientology. So it's all very interesting to note. Indeed, I need to do some further study into these hippie networks. But for the time being, I recommend S. William Snyder's Weird Tales for an overview of this network. However, I'm deeply suspicious that S. William Snyder is a spook and possibly an operative of the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst. So I'd still recommend that text. Indeed, it's always interesting to note that these altruistic rationalism movements are operative in the Warminster area. And this is evidenced by such networks as those operating out of the neighborhood cafe. So it's all very interesting indeed. These people are anti-Semitic. Indeed, all of the hippies in the United Kingdom seem to be anti-Israel, but don't actually have a real understanding of the situation. Not all Israelis are guilty of the charges being brought upon them by the British far right and the British far left. It's interesting to consider that the Hebrew community of the world is very divided. Indeed, the kind of networks I talk about are deeply interconnected with Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst Nazi intelligence continuums. And this includes Mossad and Shin Bet, who are totally percentage controlled by British fascists and neo-Nazi continuum networks, i.e. Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst continuum networks. So it's all very interesting to consider that Israel, as a state function, is coordinated and controlled by British fascists and German Nazis. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. The organizations that set themselves up against the Israeli state, such as Hamas and the PLO, are themselves controlled and coordinated by Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst operatives and British eugenicist fascists. So we're returning to my theories on the Anglo-German cryptocracy. Indeed, this Illuminist network controls absolutely everything. Indeed, there were strains of Illuminism within the British intelligence community before the Bavarian Illuminati reared its head in 1776. Indeed, the Royal Society referred to themselves as Illuminati. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, is Illuminism a British or a German strain of philosophy? This is the question, a question that we will continue to explore. Indeed, it is interesting that the German Masonic traditions, via the Ordo Templi Orientis, seem to have taken over the entire British Freemasonic degree system. So it's all a very, very interesting saga that is playing out. Indeed, Bavarian Illuminism is simply an expression of satanic ritual sacrifice rites and human rights abuses and cannibalism and necrophilia. Indeed, the Bavarian Illuminati just set themselves up to create an enormous ring, basically. A criminal syndicate that could conquer the Anglo peoples and the Vatican. Indeed, it's interesting to consider that the Vatican is now coordinated by British fascists of Royal Arch Freemasonry and Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst operatives. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. What does the future hold for the Anglo populations? Indeed, it seems the Anglo populations are sleepwalking into a Masonic, exoteric faith. Indeed, all of the females in Britain have basically been dehumanized and are such outrageous sluts due to programming inflicted upon them by the Masonic Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst, who wish to basically create a massive child sex and ritual sacrifice cult, which involves the degradation of the female populace so that certain Masons can control everything in a large organized crime structure. As Christopher Story says, this is the triumph of criminalism. And this is happening all over the Western world and the Russian Federation. Indeed, it's all very interesting to consider what is going on. Indeed, I'm going to leave it there now.